All right. So, thank you for joining this meeting. This is bi-weekly Kubernetes batch working community meeting. Today is March 12th meeting. Um, so, uh, this meeting follows Kubernetes code of conduct. So, please respect the code of conduct. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. The first topic is flavor-aware dominant resource sharing. Are you here? Um,
I don't see the author here.
yeah, sure. Next is question about potential contribution to autoscalers provisioning request controller.
I'm here. To ask that. Thanks for your time on this. Um, Let me maybe give a brief summary of what the provisioning request is. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with it and how it integrates into multi-queue and what works well today and what wasn't work well today, but what I would love to fix, okay? So a provisioning request is it's a custom resource that comes from the autoscaler project. It's an object that you create in the cluster where you can say, I want to provision, I don't know, this job with this many replicas, could be a RAID job, for example. And then there's a pod template that specifies how the pods would look like. And then the autoscaler will see the provisioning request and decides whether it can provide resources for that or cannot provide resources for that. And if it is able to, it sets the status of this object to provisioned equals to true. And Q has an admission check, which is called multi-queue, where it connects to multiple of clusters, multiple worker clusters, and creates a provisioning request in each of these. And then the cluster autoscaler in each of these clusters decides whether it can provision this provisioning request or not. And the first one to do so is the one that multi-queue picks as the worker cluster, will then delete the others and run the job in the worker cluster that provisioned the resources first. And I really like this model because it allows you to chase scarce resources like GPUs in multiple clusters. So I think it's a super cool thing. Um, that do you have any questions before I continue to what doesn't work well today, or were you able to follow? Happy to give more details. Okay, please just interrupt me in case anyone has a question. So there is one implementation that works really well, but that's not in the open source cluster autoscaler. It's one that works on GKE, which is called queued provisioning. It integrates very tightly with features called flex start and dynamic workload scheduling on GCE. And like that works perfectly. In the open source cluster autoscaler, there are two implementations for this controller. One is called check capacity, the other is called best effort atomic scale up. And both of them have issues. If you go for the check capacity one, it sees the cluster autoscaler sees the provisioning request. It looks at the resources that are currently in the cluster and decides, would this currently fit? Yes, then it's accepted. Would this currently not fit? Then it says no, and it doesn't try to scale up. So this doesn't help me because I needed to scale up, right? If the cluster currently doesn't have the resources, I want the cluster autoscaler to scale up, and I don't want it to tell me currently doesn't fit, but I'm also not trying to scale up. The other implementation is called best effort atomic scale up, and that one looks whether the cluster can currently fit the job. If yes, it says yes. If no, it will try to scale up once and it will say yes, even if the scale up fails. So the controller might tell the cloud provider, please scale this up, and then it says yes, this is provisioned, but the cloud provider might say actually there's no resources for this, and then you have a provisioning request that is in the status provisioned, but actually there are no nodes for it in that region. So that kind of breaks how useful multi-queue is when you don't have access to the GKE implementation. And I would love an implementation that's basically doing something very similar to the best effort atomic scale up. Like it tries to scale up, but then it doesn't immediately say yes. It just checks in the next iteration of the loop and sees where it currently would fit. And if it doesn't yet fit, then it just waits a bit longer. And then if in the next iteration it sees, oh, now it would fit, then it says yes. And maybe after it's some back of it, then tries to scale up again. So I'm wondering whether that is something that could be fixed, whether you think a contribution is likely to be accepted, or whether it's something where I shouldn't put time into. I see multiple raised hands. I don't know the order.
Maybe I can take
Um,
it because I was
mhm,
involved in provisioning requests and also work a little bit on auto scaling. So
mhm,
the problem with how it is implemented, it's not with cluster autoscaler and definitely not with Q. The problem is what cloud provider
yes,
APIs
understand.
provide. And most of them do not allow you to peek into the inventory and decide whether the hypothetical scale up would succeed or not.
Mhm,
And that kind of prevents implementing the atomic scale up, like
mhm,
atomic without any asterisk, so that you either
mhm,
start it and you get what you ask for, or
mhm,
you don't start it at all.
understand.
So this is the main reason. Part of the reason why it is not provided is that cloud providers want to keep the actual inventory status confidential because there are companies that scrape it and allow you to do some spot arbitrage between clouds and so on. And basically, it's against business to
Mhm,
provide this sort of information for free. We try to create some pressure with provisioning requests to make it implementable, and we didn't much succeed. So where we succeeded was with GKE, where this model fit into specific GKE functionality, which is just provide requested capacity with dedicated APIs. In most of the clouds, there is the current implementation of cluster autoscaler doesn't allow this picking, and it would require individual cloud providers contribution to make it happen. So it's not like that we can make it generic in one place in cluster autoscaler. What we could do is possibly postpone the thumbs up signal until all of the nodes are up, but that doesn't change a lot because you may still be paying for half provisioned provisioning request. So that's kind of the situation and the problem behind it. You can try to ask for this on SIG auto scaling meetings, but probably you will get the very same response that basically this functionality is at the mercy of cloud providers PMs, and which decides what APIs could become available and for who.
I have I want to say something in response to that, but others raised their hands first. Maybe I think
Mhm.
Michal, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yeah, basically, I agree with Marcin, but at the same time, I think the whole space is moving fast. So you may check with the SIG autoscaling community because maybe some informations are getting rediscussed, etc. For example, I know that there is currently the effort from raised by AWS to standardize provisioning by capacity buffers. And maybe the capacity buffers can accelerate standardization for some modes around atomic capacity. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert there, but just letting you know that you can check what's happening with the capacity buffers. Maybe they could accelerate some standardization and so that this is supported one day. But probably your best bet is the SIG autoscaling community meeting. It's not really in the hands of Q itself.
Yeah, I'll definitely ask there. Somebody else, right? Kevin, and then maybe I respond to your responses.
You can respond.
Okay.
Mine's different, so please go ahead.
Okay. I looked in the implementation and I agree with your take that the current interface for the cloud provider and the autoscaler doesn't give you something that would allow you to check whether the atomic scale-up worked, right? The implementation, the Google one, it basically gives you the ID for a resize request that is put into the status of the provisioning request. And then in the next loop of the iteration, you can just check the scale-up request here, this resize request on the managed instance group, like did this work or did this not work? And then you get this atomicity. I'm wondering, like, I understand that kind of cloud agnostic atomic scale-up currently can't be implemented because the interface doesn't allow for that. I'm wondering, on your opinion, whether a third controller that doesn't guarantee atomicity, but guarantees that it tries to scale up in a best effort way and guarantees that it will only set the status to provisioned if it actually has the resources at that moment, sacrificing atomicity, whether that is like a third controller that would be reasonable to implement. I understand it's not the perfect solution, but it's something that would help me, even if I might pay double for resources that are half provisioned in multiple regions.
I don't know. So I have mixed feelings about it, to be honest. Maybe if it's useful for you, you can ask for it. It doesn't seem like a lot of work. Maybe that could be implemented. I see it as like thing that doesn't make like a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. Like we would like to have it atomic, and probably we should try another round of pushing cloud providers to actually provide the APIs, either to look up the inventory or maybe something similar to GKE or whatever. Definitely, the more noise there is around this feature, the better, and maybe cloud providers will see a business opportunity in providing this API. If I may ask, do you represent any specific company or?
Like not a cloud provider. I work for companies called Cusp AI. We do kind of materials discovery using AI technology and scientific computing. And we use provisioning requests to chase scarce resources, basically using multi-queue.
Okay.
So I'm happy to try to make some noise. So the SIG autoscaling meeting would be the right place to do that, or?
Yes, SIG autoscaling. You can also ask if you are on AWS or on the other cloud provider, your customer engineer, or whether there are any plans. Make them aware that this feature would be important for you. Maybe you would be that drops that fills the bucket, and they will eventually decide to make like the appropriate API available.
Okay.
So on the Q end, everything is ready. Cluster Autoscaler is open source. So if any of the cloud providers would uh, like to provide a new mode specific to them, I doubt that anyone would block this initiative. It's just that without the appropriate API and without appropriate business decision to make this API available for wider public, there are limited options to provide
Got it.
proper support here.
Got it. And maybe one last question, if I may ask. The queue provisioning implementation of the provisioning request controller that works on GKE, it's like the code is not in the autoscaler. Like there's a test that refers to it. So I assume there is a fork or something that is
Yes,
made
GKE
by.
has its own fork, and to be honest, even if you saw the code, it wouldn't benefit you much because it's based on different API. So
Okay.
the API basically tells, I want to have 5 nodes of this shape, and I want it automatically. So what internal implementation of cluster autoscaler does, it just translates this provisioning request into that API, and that API guarantees atomicity.
Yeah, got it.
So there is no anything magic on the cluster autoscaler side. It's just it uses the API available on Google Cloud Platform.
It's the
If
managed
this
instance group
API
resource
was not
request.
available,
Probably.
then there would be no such feature because we cannot make atomic scale up on top of non-atomic API without any insight into the actual inventory.
Got it. Yeah. And I didn't ask about it like to understand how it works. I imagine I have a good imagination of how it would work. My question was rather meant as if there was an implementation that didn't guarantee atomicity, but that guaranteed scale up and setting to true only if it worked. And if that was accepted in the open source cluster autoscaler, would it then find its way also in the GKE managed one eventually through this fork? Or is it completely
Yes, it
separate?
would find a way because GKE cluster autoscaler is based on open source. It just adds a couple extras that uses GKE internal APIs, not necessarily available to public, has a couple of extra bells and whistles, but in most cases it's based on the open source version. So if it was accepted and was merged, then it would arrive to GKE with the next Kubernetes release, more or
Got
less.
it. These were all my questions. Thanks for your like opinions on this.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I guess this kind of answers mine. So from the OpenShift side, we are trying to look at supporting provisioning requests in our cluster autoscaler, but it sounds like even if we're using that on top of like GCP, we probably still would not be able to use queued provisioning check because that is, I guess is that required to be a GKE customer to use that one?
Sorry,
I
could you
was
please
wondering, like for OpenShift, we have our own cluster autoscaler that we offer for multiple clouds, but it sounds like when we're saying GKE, like this is not an option, even if we are like running OpenShift on GCP.
if you were running OpenShift on GCP, not GKE, then you are at the mercy of open source APIs.
Okay.
And open source APIs do not provide atomic scale up in form other than queued provisioning, or at least you cannot get it via APIs that open source cluster autoscaler is using for a generic GCP driver.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Problem is again either a specific API that does the thing or ability to look up API and then you check how many nodes of a particular shape are available in the zone. And usually these sort of APIs are non-public for kind of obvious reasons. So as a third party, more you will not have access to such APIs probably on any cloud.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Well, we'll see how it works with check capacity and best effort. Atomic scale up then.
So can I ask some more questions? So Kevin, do you know which capacity buffer or provisioning request will be selected in core kube scheduler topology area scheduling? If SIG scheduling selects capacity buffer, our queue side might need to switch from provisioning request to capacity buffer, right?
So there are right now there are a couple conversations going on. Capacity buffers predates workload aware scheduling, and it's in beta, and the Carpenter folks are very interested in having that one working because they're not gonna probably implement the provisioning request. So I'm hoping that some folks there can help. Like right now, Carpenter I don't think has support for capacity buffers. This I believe is an auto scaling API that's beta, and I think they're going through a design hopefully soon. And that solves at least the Carpenter integration, but workload aware scheduling is not really going to fit well with any of the existing APIs that are there right now. So the topology aware and all the gang scheduling stuff that's coming up from SIG scheduling, they are actually, I think, they would like to propose new auto scaling APIs. Those would start like beta alpha. So I think it's a separate problem. Martian probably knows more though.
So I'm not like 100% up to date with the current state of capacity buffers, but when I was, it was more about over provisioning requests for faster response times, faster scaling up services, not necessary to provide uh, atomic capacity for batch and ML workloads. When we were implementing provisioning request a year ago or 2 years ago, I don't remember exactly when it was. Carpenter folks didn't see it as a priority. They were much more focused on this over provisioning use case. For which they had like a full right. It was more important for their customers at the time point. So I'm not sure whether capacity buffers are a good fit at all. Here, probably like again, asking the same question on SIG autoscaling could give you more precise information.
Yeah, sounds good. We need to ask to Vastas project what is auto-scaling integration vision in the future. And we might need to align with that in Q side as well.
I've just shared the document on chat, so that's probably something you could take a look at.
Yeah, maybe capacity buffers evolved over time because now I see some people like we have an issue now. Someone opened from I don't know which company, but they want to integrate it in Q and claim that it can already be replacement for provisioning request. This of course needs to be double checked, but yeah, that's what I at least read in one of the issues recent in Q. I can post a link to the issue.
I already did.
Okay, cool.
I can add it. Well, yeah, it's in the channel.
But yeah, I don't know if we have parity already.
All right. Does anyone have any question or comment?
From my side, no. I'll take a look at the links. Thank you for providing them. And thanks for your opinions on this.
Yeah, thank you for raising this agenda today. Oh, Kevin?
Yeah, I was going to speak on behalf of the other person. I don't think she made it to this call. I said I would bring it up anyway. The next item on the agenda, if it sounds like we are able to go on now. Yeah, so mostly, I guess we're getting a lot of, probably mostly from Apple contributing to Q, and it's kind of rough. This is a rough time slot, and they've been asking, like, there's kind of been popping up. I also would like the idea of having like a PST friendly time because the job set folks are all on in Seattle, and it's been hard to find. Like we don't have much of that there, so I'm definitely was curious. Like, I mean, I think part of it is some of the folks want to meet with Q folks. Plus, also, I know Yuki, you mentioned at one point us talking about having a more like friendly time for job or job set for the APAC region. And I'm wondering if we should start maybe considering that again. The only thing I will ask is I don't want us, like we did last time, I don't want us to change the frequency of this time. I think last time we ended up moving this to like once a month, which I felt like the velocity of Q was we needed to meet more frequently than that. So go on, Marcin.
Martin?
Maybe we could find a spot that is okay for PST folks and still doable for European. Like doing it in West Coast afternoon is not doable because that's the middle of the night and no one from the Europeans would join. But something that would be, I don't know, 9 p.m. European time might be doable. Not sure about Japan, what time it would be. So Yuki, you need to provide some information, but that could that time slot that is okay for European could mean that like we will not have like a failure this time.
Yeah. So as far as I know, so previously we had a PST time zone meeting, and as far as I know, Kevin, did you host the meeting, right?
Yeah, I
How
mean,
was yeah.
attendance was low. I also, at the time, we just had everyone. You weren't there yet, so it was everyone in Europe, and it was at 6 p.m. for me Eastern, which is a nightmare time for me and my family. So I stopped. I was not able to host that one anymore. But honestly, it was being canceled every month because there was no agenda for a while. And if there was, I mean, yeah, it just kind of fizzled out. To be fair, though, that was pre Apple kind of poking their head around stuff again. So I feel like there is more interest to that, especially on the Q side. And I know, uh, yeah, and some of the discussion we're also having, like some of the people from the West Coast are kind of more involved in like the WAS and some of the Q stuff is discussed there at 1, unfortunately at 1 p.m. Eastern time, which is probably too late for a lot of people, but some of these conversations are happening. I mean, I think it's worth reevaluating it. I do think that what's challenging is if people want Q maintainer like to discuss features, it's going to be kind of like we definitely do want the main maintainers on the call, which means the PST time is not that friendly. I don't mind Amy's suggestion, but I think that might be too late for you, Yuki? What is 8 a.m.? That's 3 hours from now.
Yeah, honestly, so I'm okay with moving this meeting to 1 hour or 2 hour later. In that case, in PST time zone, I
Maybe
guess
it'd be
it is.
later for us.
Yeah. Honestly, so in this meeting, this is 11 p.m. In Japan. So either 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. No different for me. So yeah. Let's make so voting system and let's select which for which 8 a.m. PST or 9 a.m. PST.
Yeah, minus daylight saving times or with daylight saving times. I don't know anymore. I'm okay to move it up 2 hours, I think is what we would say.
I think it overlaps with like the checkpoint meeting. So like, if preferably if the 8 is probably better.
Oh, I see. So checkpoint working group meeting is 9 a.m. Bi-weekly.
Yeah.
Right?
Right now I think they're, oh wait, actually, never mind. It's 10 a.m. So okay. 9 with daylight savings is fine.
All right. So can you share checkpoint working meeting schedule in this documentation afterward? We can consider the meeting so that we can avoid conflicting.
Yeah, I think I'm happy with. I mean, I'll follow up with Alana, but that will probably be the best option we have. I think for Q, it's gonna have to be a friendly time for us all time zones right now. So not the best for everyone, fortunately.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But Kimi, do you know any platform to vote new meeting time?
I've seen people use them. I don't know. Not top of my head.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any comments?
Basically has had a comment. I think we did try the two different times alternating, but what that ended up meaning was one of them, that was what we had before. I don't want to go back to that one because of I think it's important to have this meeting every 2 weeks for the queue, at least for a lot of the queue development. So if we did, I would maybe a separate meeting, but I think this is the compromise we had. I think works probably the best.
Yeah, I agree with you. Any comments? Okay, so the next is admission gate implementation question, right?
Hello.
Oh.
Hi.
Hello.
You've probably seen my email pop up a few times in the last couple of days. Apologies for that. But I've been prototyping this admission get it by feature, and it's basically a way where you can set an annotation at the job level, and then that guarantees that while the feature gate is on and that specific annotation is not empty for your job, it won't be admitted. That's the idea. There's a cap, and then we finalized that cap fairly recently. I started working for the implementation, hoping to get it before the release, which I understand is on the 17th. And I have something that it seems to be working. I have integration tests for job objects and PyTorch job objects. So I hooked the validation at the level of the generic job webhook and the workload. Seems to be working. Technically, there's nothing stopping it from working for all the job types that Q can manage. So I think that's fine. But there are a couple of questions. So for example, today I was looking into documenting the thing so that, if it's in there, people should be able to use it. And then I realized that I should be, actually, a person suggested I change a specific markdown file, and I did. But then I thought that I should also change the documentation for the admission concept. And while I was doing that, I basically ended up adding a new phase, which seems weird. So I'm looking for some guidance, like how would you prefer to document this? If you could give me some like generic direction.
Michał?
Okay, so I'm pretty familiar with the CAP. I reviewed that. So now let me ask to understand, you have an implementation question or something surfaced that we didn't foresee in the CAP? And there are some
For the
complications.
actually, good question. Technically, I have an implementation question as well, because I realized now the source of truth for the gate is the job object, right? Which means that if some internal system in Q sets the workload annotation directly without going through the job object, the next time the job reconciler runs, it can potentially override whatever is in the annotation of the workload. Does that make sense?
Wait, but we have validation agreed that prevents any other controllers from adding scheduling gates in the lifetime, right? So this wouldn't be possible.
Correct. Adding would not
So
work.
the way I
but
assume it
technically
it
could
works that
remove.
okay, so it could remove even though it's not yet removed from the job.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, I would need to think about this case. I guess it's one of the corner cases where we don't really advise users to interact with workload objects. Probably there are plenty of scenarios where users interacting directly with the workload objects could screw something up, like delete priorities, etc. And we rarely think about such scenarios, so I also didn't think in this case. So I think it's relatively of a small worry. I can think how we could improve it, but I think if there is some user interacting directly with workloads, it's this scenario is not necessarily like a blocker for the design, in my view. But yeah, I will think about this, but I don't know. That's my like initial thought, at least on the subject. And we could probably recover relatively easily from this. Like, okay, the scheduling gate remains on the job, but it's basically irrelevant at this point. Like, what matters is what is at the workload object. So if it's removed from the workload, then it gets through admission. That would be my my thinking. So like the workload is the source of truth, actually. And this is what we do also for other things. Let's say you have priority, so we resolve priority from the job to the workload object. But then if someone mutates the workload object behind the scenes, it's not Q, then yeah, they can bump or lower the priority. But for scheduling decisions, what matters is what's in workload. That's our like main assumption.
Okay, may I make a suggestion? What if I drop a comment in the pull request and then we say, okay, here's what we're gonna do. Either we keep it as is or we make XYZ change. And then I take it from there to implement it now, or we accept it as is.
Yeah, sure. This makes perfect sense. Yeah, please ask the comments, CC me, maybe also Yuki, so that he can have also some opinion. But yeah, I think this makes perfect sense. Just ask us in the comment.
Okay. The second question that I had was about some guidance regarding the documentation itself. So I was wondering, should I because conceptually, while I was reading the admission concept, it said there's two phases. There's quota reservation, and then there's the admission checks. Now, this thing, it's called admission gating, admission gated by, but in reality, it's coming as like the first phase. It's either part of quota reservation or slightly before, right? In a way, because it's gating, it's effectively gating quota reservation. I'm pretty sure we had this discussion with Marcin. He brought up that maybe this should be called in a different way. So
Yeah.
then,
So the idea is, I know the discussion. The idea is that admission in queue is like currently two-phase process. So it starts with quota reservation. So you can think like quota is part of the admission process, is the first phase. The second is optional depending on the configured admission checks, which may or may not be configured. But it's all part of the admission. And there is also TAS in the picture. So it's not just quota reservation, but also TAS reservation, depending on the configuration of TAS or not. But I don't think we distinguish. We should say like quota reservation gating, because what we like gate is actually, we can say that is the whole admission process, from like how we document things in the documentation. It's admission.
okay. Then I will leave another comment saying, oh, sorry, Tenzin, you have something.
Yeah. So as Michał mentioned, so the queue documentation is for mostly user documentation, and we already have enhancement proposal for technical details and the developers. So we can simplify the admission gated by internal mechanism only inside in enhancement proposal. And additionally, so as far as I know, so we have admission page, admission concept page in our documentation. So we may be able to mention about admission gated by annotation mechanism slightly. But so I think we should minimize the internal mechanism in our documentation. This is my recommendation or comments.
Have a suggestion. Would it help if I left a comment and CC'd both you and Michal with like a suggestion? I think what I did is wrong. just to put it out there. I think that the documentation I wrote is probably too much, or it shouldn't be this way. But it might be easier if we see the wrong thing that I wrote to fix it. So I don't expect it to be accepted as is. I just wrote something to have like a frame to think about this problem. So I'll CC you both and we can come up with a solution, right? Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. So I haven't yet reviewed this implementation in detail, just skim through. It looks okay-ish, but yeah, I will please see some places which you think are maybe questionable, so we will review, and I will review in particular. I haven't done this yet because yeah, the week was busy. We are preparing the patch releases, so yeah. But yeah, your cap is or your implementation is high on my to-do list.
Any comment? All right. So the next is Andre job set V1 API graduation, right?
Yeah, hi guys. I just want to maybe
Are you
quickly
here?
talk
Oh,
about it. Yeah. So I think I kind of like discussed this topic in January, right? To actually ask community what do we really think about V1 graduation, and I know we kind of been postponed. I think my question is here. I know leader worker set ready in V1, and right now in job set we do have Alpha 2 API. So my question is like, are there any interest from the community? First of all, to graduate job set, and the second one is to actually support multiple API versions moving forward, similar to how we have in Q these days, right?
Yeah, I added the link. I mean, we are required to support, well, I guess we're not required for alpha, but I think if we do the graduation, we would have conversion webhooks from alpha to V1 and probably support both for at least a few releases, and then probably, I don't know, maybe remove alpha. I guess I haven't thought about it for that, but yeah, I think there is, at least there's interest from my end. I just don't know who will do the work.
Okay. Do we think like, after we have the V1 API and do have conversion webhook, all the features we kind of propose should go through, Kubernetes best practices, like via like, alpha, beta. I know like, in 6 we don't really enforce these specific rules, right? And every projects they do different things, but want to hear like your thoughts, Kevin, like on, new features being proposed to JobSet API.
So, no, I mean, typically it's very, I mean, we are at, like, I know people think that the pod API is very stable, but every release there are new features added to that API, and it's still V1. It's just that you can add a new field under a feature gate as long as your API, as long as you're able, as long as you're not breaking anything, and you can convert from an older version to a newer one. So for new features, unless like we decide to completely rewrite the API or break it, I don't think we would need to like have a V1 alpha API for, I mean, we probably like with the way Q has done it, if it introduces like a new controller, it could have like that controller be alpha and then we promote it to beta, but that's usually kind of the approach. But features usually are fine to add to the existing V1 API. There's no problem there.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess that we just need to find, resources, right, to do this in 2026. I kind of like want to hear, like, especially from the Google folks, like, are there any blockers you see, like, if we're going to break API in V1? Because I think there are a couple of things we've been discussing, like a couple of deprecations, right, and changes we want to do before we do V1.
Yeah.
But it looks like yeah.
I don't know if, well, I think most of those people are in the PST.
Okay.
I mean, if Mikhail or Martin know, are familiar with the job set development, they can comment, but I don't know. Yeah, the folks I have interacted with there, I think, are in the West Coast. So I don't exactly know if, I know we have some features for Q and job set that are coming up now. So I don't know if, I haven't seen if the KEPs would cause us to drastically change the API though, but I don't think they will.
Yeah, I think my only question is, like, because there are a bunch of changes we want to do, especially I know that there is a kind of like a process of, partial job admission with Q, right? So my question is like, I understand, like some customers require this as fast as it is possible, but at the same time, it will kind of slow down the graduation. So kind of like need to make a hard decision, like what we want to do first, right?
Yeah. Uh, the big one for me will be gang scheduling. I think I would like to get that figured out of whether like if right now I don't care if we include like the alpha APIs for workload and the alpha API for job set, but once we promote it to V1, like I probably don't want the difference of like some of our APIs are alpha, like the workload and pod group, while our job set is V1, because then it becomes a really kind of complicated problem to support that. So
Yeah.
well, I think that's definitely one I'd like us to nail down. But it depends on what the API looks like. If we can do it, like promoting jobs at the V1, but I would like to, talk to the job
But I
set
guess like,
folks.
leader worker set has the same problem, right? And leader worker set is the V1 API.
Yeah, it does. I don't know how far the leader worker set group has gotten with it. And to be honest, they didn't bother going with alpha. They just went directly to V1, which is probably what we should have done with job set, but we didn't. So yeah, anyway, go on, Mikhail.
Right. I have a question. Andrei mentioned that the graduation plan would slow down feature development in JobSet. Is it just because of the like human manpower, reviewers' power, or there is any other obstacle that this would create?
Yeah, I think it's mostly about, like the resources available, right? And I mean, we don't really expect a lot of changes in V1, right? Because I think API quite stable, right? And it's already been well adopted by many organizations and users. Yeah, so it's more about prioritization, right? How we want to prioritize the work. And I know Q also will require to do some changes, right? When we do the V1. So
Yeah, so for Q, we graduated V1 Beta 1 to V1 Beta 2, which was like major. It didn't stall feature development completely, so you can basically continue feature development and do graduation. But yeah, reviewer time is one problem here for sure. Another problem is that is scale. Maybe for JobSet it's not that bad, but for Q we discovered the problem for webhooks. You may because if you do API graduation and you change something in the API, you need conversion webhooks, right? And then the problem we discovered is that if you have conversion webhooks for numerous objects like workloads in Q, and so for example, if I don't know exactly what was the scale, but like you may think let's say 30K workloads, 30,000 workloads. The problem is that if API server doesn't have a warm cache or with the list of workloads, and you try to, because for example API server is restarted, and then also queue is restarted around the same time. So when queue is trying to initialize, it is trying to fetch all the workloads. And now, if you have V1 beta 1 in our case, or you would have V1 in alpha, in case of JobSet, then it needs to convert every single workload to get to the list of the new API version. And this basically breaks some internal timeouts in the API server or etcd, and queue couldn't initialize. So we have this is like a known issue in the API server. I'm not sure this is blocker for graduation because this issue only hits if you have 30,000 objects or something like this. I don't know if this is realistic for job sets, but it's
yeah, I
something
think it's
the community, like job set with the job set maintainers. Like there is this risk that at scale this may become a problem. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like I think like so I know Google folks, especially on TPUs, right? I think they run maybe a few thousand of the jobs. I don't know about 10 of thousands, probably the answer is yes, but we need to double check with them on TPU specifically, right? But like, so in that case, when the conversion webhook, you require the actual workloads to be more than dozens of thousands, right? Not the pods.
Not the jobs we'd be concerned about. It's whether or not you'd have 30,000 separate job sets.
Job sets. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't think actually, I don't think we do have such use cases, right? Because usually, jobs, yeah. Yes, it's hard to mention, like, what people actually, building with job set, but it's more like, like job is a building block, but job set is kind of the final workload, right? That you need to use for inference, for training, for data processing, right? So it's like a different, I would say, use case. But anyway, so I guess, like, so what do you think I came in terms of next steps? Like, I know we want to switch this time to alternative, right? To meet with other job set maintainers. How do you think we should move on?
We probably should just have a call with the Google folks that are working on job set and figure out for the V1 and see if it I don't think it's been a priority for them. It probably won't be for me, honestly. But we can. I mean, I think I did meet with one person to talk about it, and I thought it would happen. But I think, like, the problem is there's I'm not sure, like, why the Q got pushed to graduate, but for job set, it was just like it's working. Like, there's not too much that people gain by going to V1.
Okay.
That was at least the general stance that I got from them, is like, it could potentially be an issue to convert if we do it wrong, which is a bigger problem than if we just keep adding changes to the Alpha 2 API and just accept that we're treating it like GA. But I don't like that answer, to be honest, because I do think I have to defend the API, at least internally, quite a bit, that it's not alpha level. Like, it's not like most people look at it and go, it's beta or it's alpha, so it's not ready for production. I'm not going to use it. And I think that's the messaging. It can be fixed with messaging, though. But anyway.
What if you try to do just simple graduation, like no changes, basically just graduation, without even conversion webhooks? Then it should be relatively simple. If this idea gets acceptance from the maintainers, it seems quite easy to execute on.
From what I know from them, JobSet is effectively treated like a V1 API. So
this would be just admitting the status quo and graduating without any changes. So then the risk for any breaks is...
all existing job sets in queue would break, right? Like, if we had a quota and we did an upgrade, like, we'd have to drain all the job sets and recreate them as V1, which could be kind of disruptive.
Not necessarily. You would... I think if there are no changes between the API versions, they will be automatically converted by the storage, like or API server between the versions. Like this process is triggered, and normally you need conversion webhooks, but conversion webhooks you only need if you do make a change. So, for example, in Q, we graduated a couple of CRDs like topology or resource flavor, which didn't go through any API changes. So we didn't even had to add conversion webhooks. And then you basically maintain for a long period of time both APIs. But I don't know. I don't think you need necessarily to.
We do have some breaking
conversion
changes we want to make. We do have some breaking changes we want to make and clean, like, kind of like you did with V1 Beta 1 to V1 Beta 2. So, like, it's not like a fresh just graduate the API. Like, I think we have like a startup policy we want to I mean, it's a deprecation, so there are a couple fields we want to remove and other stuff as part of the graduation, because that's sort of kind of like what you all did with Q. But anyway, I think we're at time over, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So just a question. So Mihao, yes, so we did not have conversion webhooks for resource flavor, but we had schema-based conversion mechanism for every resources, right? So in that
Yes.
case, even though job set doesn't have any breaking changes between alpha batch and v1, job set should provide a schema-based conversion, I guess.
Yes, but this one is, I think, automatically done by API server. You probably just need to mark one of the versions like hub or something like this. You can follow how it was done in queue for those resources which didn't go through any changes.
Yeah, let's think offline. Any other comments?
Yeah, thanks for the
Okay,
discussion.
so
Let's follow up for this. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah. So the quick update. So in the next meeting, we will have KubeCon Amsterdam. So we will cancel this meeting. Okay. Okay. All right. See you in KubeCon Amsterdam after the next meeting. Bye.